No, sir.
Okay. I cannot. Okay, let me fix that. Yeah, thanks for being patient. I'm still figuring out this the best way to do this as well. So let's try this.
Okay, I can see it now. Yeah, I've got it as well.
Okay.
I have it as well.
Okay, so everyone still got it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So quick, the agenda, took a roll call. We're going to talk about the exercise and technology evaluations in general. Then I'm going to talk about two other concepts which are not totally related, but so they are related, but they're different concepts and they're separate. Cost versus price and redundancy. And again, I'm going to try and keep this as much as I can to 30 minutes. So let me just see if anyone else logged on while I was. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, guys. Well, let me get started then. To go back to the screen share. Okay, and if anyone has questions, feel free to chime in. Just I won't see you, so just make sure you're pretty loud, and I'll stop and answer the question. If not, we can talk about it later. But first, I want to talk about these technology evaluations, and that's the focus of this exercise this week, related to communications. So the question is, why do we do these? It's the first question, and my answer to that is, in emergency management, homeland security, it's government heavy. Not only there's some private sector work out there, but generally we're working in large organizations. And unless we are the top of that organization, we have bosses who make decisions mostly about money and so on and strategy. So us, when you find yourself in a role where you are charged with, or you take it upon yourself to do something, and you need to convince your higher ups to either do this or spend money, you need to build a convincing argument. You need to build confidence that you have done the proper due diligence and that they can have confidence in your recommendation. One way to do that is this technology evaluation. The reason why you want to do this is because of those issues. It'll lend a lot of credence to your argument. It'll give confidence to the decision makers, and you got to put in their perspective. If we're talking about investing big money in some communications technology, their reputation's on the line. So, if you build confidence in them, they're more likely to support you and make that decision that you want. So technology evaluations are not only a smart thing to do and produce better quality work and help you make better decisions, they help getting those decisions made and helping improve your pitch, your argument, or what have you. And we all have excuse me. Sorry, clearing my throat. So going into technology evaluations, your exercise is what I call a miniature evaluation, and it's a real small scale thing with limited information. So the first thing I'll say is, I hope you guys all understand I'm very much about process versus outcome. Obviously, outcome is important, but in this style of learning, it's really important that you guys go through the process. So that is why, when we redesigned this course, one of my main themes was, okay, let's have the students try stuff as much as possible and actually do kind of hands-on stuff, because I want you to understand the process, and that's a lot, to me, more valuable than seeing the seeing the output that someone else made. So again, that technology evaluation exercise is meant just for you to go through it. So basically, you got to pick a couple pieces of technology to solve the problem I issued. You need to go through a process of determining the criteria, and then furthermore, you have to decide on how important they are by the weighting. So let me get back to the slides. In general, technology evaluation considerations, you don't want to start with the solution. You do not want to start with the gadget or the piece of software that you want to get and say this is the solution for everything. No, that is the wrong way to do it, and it's not going to help you make your argument. You never start with the end result. You start with the problem, and you create objectives, and you say we want to solve this problem. And, for example, our objective is to do it in the most cost-efficient way possible. What does that mean? That means you have a low budget. It's not going to cost too much money. Or if you want the most reliable solution, then, it implies that you don't really care too much about money. You just want to make sure this thing works, or so on and so forth. There's a unlimited number of objectives that you can have, and usually there's more than one. And then, again, the criteria weighting. That is where you decide what's most important. Is cost more important than reliability? If yes, then you're going to weight cost more than reliability. The way the exercise is set up, I developed a spreadsheet for you that makes your life easier, because I know some of you are not very comfortable with math, and obviously this is not a math class, but some real simple math. I built in the simple equations into that spreadsheet, so it should be automated. So if you follow the directions, I think, it should all make sense on the math end. But essentially, the bottom line is if you do criteria, they all have to add up to 1. And that's the most important thing you need to know. And think of, a percentage. If it's 25%, it would be represented as 0.25. And so basically you want to decide your weightings are reflective of how important something is. If you have 4 objectives and they're equally as important, they'd all get 25%. The next factor that you want to consider is objectivity. You want to make this as independent as possible. Obviously, you might be biased towards one solution, but that is not the best way to make these decisions, and it doesn't look good when you do brief your higher ups. You don't want to make it seem like you have some vested interest or you really want to do this because you like some gadget or some technology. Obviously, bias clouds your judgment and other people's judgment. So you want to be as objective as possible. And again, this whole exercise, the evaluation, is a way to bring objectivity to it. If you have backup and you have some, if you can show them your spreadsheet that you used and your criteria, that gives a lot of credence to your argument, and that makes someone think, hey, this person actually, has some numbers to show me, and it's based on some kind of logic. So it'll make your argument stronger to make it objective.
You should be prepared to offer an opinion if they ask for one, though, correct?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And all I'm saying is don't. It goes back to the first statement. Don't start with the solution.
Right.
Start with the problem. If you end up where you want to end up, that's great. But if you don't end up, then you have to sit and think, why did we not end up where we wanted to end up? And truly evaluate. Maybe your initial assumption of this, gadget X was not correct. So yeah, obviously, your opinion is what matters, but a structured analysis gives a lot of, it's a good method and it's a well-respected method. So it is worth a lot. Your opinion obviously is worth a lot too, so don't get me wrong. Cost and price. There is a big difference between cost and price, and I'm not going to talk about it right now because that's our next topic. But also I want to say there's other methods that are very similar to evaluating technology. I've listed them quickly. Delphi, expert opinion elicitation, and then just general independent analysis. I mean, when I say independent, I mean turn it over to a third party and say, hey, you guys have you guys are independent. Here's our criteria. Come back to us with a ranking of the top 3 technologies. So that takes it completely out of your hands. That's one way to do it. Delphi and expert opinion are other structured feedback processes. And again, it's similar to what we're doing in our exercise, and the commonalities are their structure, and you're using multiple opinions, not just one single opinion. Multiple people are responding to the same structured question. So they're ranking, so you can compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges, as they say. So if you want to explore Delphi and expert opinion elicitation on your own more, those are other methods you could use to do this. So cost versus price. This is a very important concept, and there's kind of two senses to it. There's an economic sense of this argument, cost versus price, and there's a technology sense. In the economic sense, it's slightly different. So if you're an economist, let's use the example of a restaurant. If you're an economist, and you're an owner of that restaurant, and it's a steakhouse, let's say, you need to know how much to charge for your steak, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to add up, okay, how much did I buy that steak from the vendor? How much do I have to pay for the cook? The insurance for the building, the facility, for all the hardware, the napkins, silverware, all that. And you're going to come up with a figure, say $20. And then obviously you're going to build in profit too. But $20 to say is your cost, and that's the addition of all those things I listed. In economic sense, the price is what the customer is willing to pay, right? So, the price, actually, it might be less than $20 if, let's say, there's a million good steakhouses in the area. There's going to be some tough competition, and $20 might be expensive. But if it's got, it could, if it's, your restaurant has a great reputation, I'm going to come in and pay $50 for my steak dinner, and I don't really care how much it costs. So that's the economic sense of cost versus price. In a technology sense, it's slightly different. The cost is the sticker price. The cost is if you go out and buy a set of radios for $100, that is your cost. So now, what is the price in the technology sense? The price is actually much more than $100. So you've just bought $100 worth of equipment. But you also have to train people on using that equipment, which costs $20. You have to have some kind of implementation strategy, which costs another $20. You might need a whole help desk to help people out who have problems with their radios, so add another 20. So your original sticker price was 100, but clearly, what you're actually spending is closer to 200. So that is what I mean by cost versus price. And that cost versus price definition is what I want you to focus on, the technology sense. The economic sense is slightly different, but focus on the technology. So always keep in mind that you have your sticker price and then you have everything else in addition to that. So that is important when you make these evaluations. You might have a low sticker price, but the training required is very expensive versus, a high sticker price and no training. So you need to evaluate those together. So moving on, the next concept is redundancy. And I know everybody knows what that word means. So I'm going to just go on and talk about, some examples and how it relates to the concept of what we're doing. So obviously redundancy means, having a backup. But, backup kind of implies just a single backup. So redundancy can actually mean more than just a single backup. So for example, in the aerospace industry, let's take an average airplane, for example. An airplane can control its flight through a variety of methods, but, controlling its rudders, its ailerons, and so on and so forth. A modern airplane will have multiple ways to do that. And obviously, if it doesn't do that, you can't control the plane. So the first way is probably some digital control. So the pilot can press a joystick and it translates it to a digital signal and it goes to some kind of electronic system and it moves the rudders, for example. Secondly, there might be a hydraulic system that also can work. The pilot can pull a lever and it'll move the component. And then thirdly, there might be actually a manual way. And let's say there is an actual a lever that is directly connected to that component, and the pilot can go in and just crank it. So that's an example of 3 different ways that all function that can accomplish the same task. So obviously the preferred method is the joystick method, but if that breaks, then you can go to your hydraulic method, and if that breaks, then you can go to your manual mechanical method. So that's what we call, triplicate redundancy. In the space program on the space shuttle, a lot of the components actually have quadruple redundancy, especially a lot of the life support components. So, for example, on the space shuttle, there are about 4 different ways to get oxygen to the crew. different filter systems, different tanks that are completely separate. So, redundancy, just keep that in mind. Doesn't have to be a single redundant system. The second point is, redundancy is a function of criticality. And what I mean by that is the more critical something is, for example, on the space shuttle, obviously the life support system is probably the most critical, because if you can't keep the astronauts alive, then you don't have a space shuttle. So obviously you're going to focus a lot more attention and resources and a lot more redundancy on the life support system. So, when I say function of, what I really mean is as criticality goes up, then redundancy goes up. So you can't always treat everything as equal. You can't go to a system and say everything has to be quadruple redundant. No. What you need to do is you need to rank and prioritize what needs to be redundant, and those are going to be the most critical components. And why do we do this? Because redundancy costs money. Obviously, not only money, but in an engineering sense, if on a space shuttle, for example, you have limited weight concerns. So if you have quadruple redundancy over everything, your space shuttle will be so heavy it can't fly. So redundancy costs money, and there's other. So, say it again.
Looks like you're muted.
Okay, am I back? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So back to my point, redundancy costs money, and that's why we rack and stack, and we focus more attention on the most critical things. So that's it. That's all I have for the lecture. I'm going to close these slides and stop the screen share. Okay. So I just want to open it up to any questions. If anyone has any questions about what I talked about just now or the exercise, now's the time to ask them.
It seems pretty straightforward.
Cool. Yeah, that's my aim in life, to make things straightforward.
We were kind of talking about the upcoming midterm while you're getting
Sure.
back over it.
I mean, specific questions or just general?
No, I don't think it's even opened up yet.
No. I think this. I have to go and look, but listen, I'm not. Obviously, I think you understand my style by now. I'm not gonna ask you. I'm not trying to trick you on the midterm or anything like that. So I wouldn't stress out about it. I think actually the midterm is just one question, and if I remember correctly, it's just setting up a scenario similar to the exercise, and you guys coming up with a solution to it. So. In terms of the midterm, don't stress. It shouldn't take you all week. I really hope that you open it up early and you can probably get it done in a day or two, and then have the rest of the week to relax and not think about school. Because, UMUC system, you have no spring break. So my strategy is midterm week, make it a really easy week to kind of give you a break for that week. Any other questions? All right, guys. Well, so just real quick, some admin stuff again. If you do, we're going to probably be doing about 2 more of these sessions throughout the semester. And some lessons learned that I've noticed. One is make sure your time zone is set correctly on your Google invites, on your Google Calendar. If it's not, when I send you an invite, it's going to show up differently. Second, and Danielle, I see your question about can you show the last slide again? I just saw that now. I'll definitely send the slides out. I'll post them so you have them. But in terms of your actual connection, I've learned that the physical proximity to your router is important. So I'm actually in my living room right now. My office is upstairs, but my router is right behind me. So when I did the first one in my office upstairs, the quality was not great. And so if you are if you're cutting in and out, it might be me, but it's probably more likely that your connection is not great. So go close to your router or do a hardline connection, even better.
Yeah, internet sucks in Italy, so.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate, listen, and obviously the way I do this standard is I can't get everyone at the same time, so you always have an option of the live. and I do 2 options for that, and then the recording. So there's no excuse not to participate in some level. Obviously, I think the live sessions are better, but you know, there's always an opportunity. So, any other questions?
Not here.
Cool. Well, all right, guys. Listen, have a good weekend, and you know, if you have any, one last question: does everybody know who their partner is for the exercise? Okay, I know most of you. There's some people having trouble. If you're having trouble, just let me know, and I'll let you know. But you can find it if you go under groups, and then if you the category I think is week 5 CTE exercise. So you can find it. I know that it's possible, but if you're having problems, just let me know, and I'll set you up with your partner.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to stay on for another minute if anyone wants to stay on and chat, but otherwise, you guys have a good Friday and a good weekend, and we'll talk later.
Angelique, are you logged on by any chance?
She was on last night, so
Okay.
yeah.
Last night.
Oh, he sent the list out last night?
There's no specific list, but in Leo, what I did is I used there's a function where it just automatically creates groups, and it assigns you a partner. So if you go into Leo, your group under week 5, you should have. And I see my Leo is a little different than yours, so I can't tell you exactly how to do that, but you should see something where it gives you a group member.
My Tools has a drop menu at the top menu bar. So if you drop on My Tools and I click groups, it tells you who your partner is.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's say let's. Yeah, if you go to My Tools here and then Groups, it's going to be different for me. But if you go to this week 5 communication technology exercise, for me, it lists all these groups. And the way I can see it, I can go to View Enrollment and see who the members are. So it is populated. I know that for sure.
Okay.